As Tropical Depression 2 is continuing to organize, tropical storm watches are in effect from the Florida Panhandle to the Mississippi River Delta. And even though this system is starting to battle some unexpected shear, it is expected to start organizing and intensifying as it approaches the Louisiana coast. It is now expected to make landfall as a potentially 50 to 60 mile per hour tropical storm, potentially bringing significant impacts in terms of rainfall, storm surge, and potential flooding across much of southern Louisiana. However, there is still a possibility this reemerges from the Gulf and potentially strengthens from there. And in this video, we're going over all the models, all the data, and the latest on Tropical Depression 2. Alright folks, let's get into this. So this is what we have with Tropical Depression 2 at this current point based on satellite imagery. What we have going on, we're seeing a lot more convection that is really starting to flare up as it's continuing to organize and get its act together. It is battling some wind shear, as I mentioned in the intro, that we're going to need to pay attention to. We have the latest from the NHC in terms of their advisory and in the cone, and they have shifted this a bit further up to the north than last night, but that might make things more interesting if you're tuning in from the Gulf Coast, particularly from the Florida Panhandle to the Mississippi River Delta. So this is as of the 10 a.m. advisory. Its maximum sustained winds are now 35 miles per hour, so closing in on tropical storm strength, moving northwest at 3 miles per hour. It is expected to become a tropical storm by tonight and then move further to the west and head towards the Mississippi River Delta, potentially make landfall in Louisiana, move through southern Louisiana and then reemerge, and then potentially head towards Texas as either a tropical storm or tropical depression according to the NHC. Let's go ahead and read their discussion. Let's go ahead and read the latest advisory that we have for you guys right here. Let's go ahead and start with the public advisory. The depression is getting better organized according to the NHC. New watches were issued this morning for portions of the Gulf Coast. 35 mile per hour winds, as I said. Pressure of 1,007 millibars at this current point in time. So that's what we're dealing with at this current point, mainly from Hurricane Hunter reconnaissance that is out there. So taking a look at this, let's go ahead and read some of the discussion now. Satellite imagery and surface observations indicate that the depression is becoming better organized, with the low-level circulation getting better defined and increased convective banding near the center. However, reports from the Hurricane aircraft and surface observations show that this has not yet resulted in strengthening. The maximum 925 millibar flight level winds are around 34 knots, so they're holding it at 30 miles per hour. The center of the depression seems to have reformed a little to the south during the past several hours. However, the overall motion is around 3 knots to the northwest. There's a little change in the track forecast reasoning from the previous advisory. The tropical cyclone remains sandwiched between two mid-level ridges, and all of those that we were talking about that last night on stream. The new forecast brings the center near southeastern Louisiana and then reaches southeastern Texas by 5 days out. The new forecast is a little south of the previous track based on the current position and the possibility that the forecast northerly shear may help steer the system a little bit further to the southward. This is where the interesting part is right here with the intensity. The depression is experiencing moderate northeasterly shear, and these conditions should continue for another 24 to 30 hours. It is likely that there will be convective bursts near and south of the center during this time, and those should help intensify the cyclone to a tropical storm. After about 30 hours, the northeasterly shear is forecast to increase, and the global models suggest that it will get strong enough to destroy the vertical integrity of the cyclone. This will halt intensification and then cause some weakening. The new forecast calls for a peak intensity of 50 miles per hour in 36 to 48 hours, and this is on the upper portion of the intensity guidance right here. We're going to be looking at that in just a second because I want to take a quick analysis on myself. But they are having their winds at 50 miles per hour according to the NHC. We looked at the cone earlier as well, kind of talking about that as well. Let's go ahead and take a quick gander at a couple of our impact areas that I do want to pay attention to. Here is your storm surge map for right here. From Morgan City to the mouth of the Mississippi, run 1 to 3 feet of surge is expected. Same with Lake Pontchartrain. 2 to 4 feet of surge is expected from Louisiana, from the mouth of the Mississippi, all the way through Mississippi to near the Alabama-Florida border as well. Whereas 1 to 2 and 1 to 3 feet is expected in the Florida Panhandle and Big Bend regions as well. There are storm surge watches, for those areas for that reason. Taking a quick gander at our rainfall potential. Right here, a lot of it is mainly staying to the south, mainly because of that increase of vertical shear that is moving through and producing that convection and kind of keeping it further to the south. So we're going to want to pay attention and see how this will ultimately pan out. But that's the latest that we have from the NHC. I want to start by taking a look at the models, give my own perspective on things, and kind of give an idea of what may be happening and how things are going to start panning out. So starting off, we're going to go ahead and we're going to Weather Nerds. We're going to be using the ensembles first, then we're going to talk about the operational, because we were talking about this disconnect that we were noticing with the ensembles versus the operational, where a lot of the ensembles were wanting the system to develop and strengthen, whereas the operational was trying to do everything it could to catch up. So here's what we have with the European ensembles. Let's go ahead and start about 12 hours out to see what's going on. Things are definitely starting to get their act together a little bit more, seeing that organization kind of shifting a bit further to the west. I'm noticing before this pretty big northwestward jog towards Louisiana right here. Not noticing as many power numbers as we were seeing yesterday for sure. We are definitely seeing a decrease in intensity in terms of some of the stronger ensemble runs, and the majority of them have shifted a bit further to the north, mainly due to Hurricane Hunter reconnaissance helping with that data. Now having the system impacting parts of Louisiana and Mississippi right there, which would definitely help keep the intensity on the lower side, whereas if this moved further to the south and missed land entirely, this could potentially strengthen into something much stronger than either a strong tropical storm or weak hurricane, according to some of these ensembles right here. So taking a quick gander at that, majority of the models want this to head towards Louisiana at this current point in time, although a good chunk of them have this heading towards the northwestern Gulf and heading towards Texas after that. Although some of these ensembles do want this to still strengthen up to a hurricane, they've definitely decreased with the power numbers, and those members have definitely decreased from what we've seen yesterday, mainly due to that Hurricane Hunter reconnaissance and the system just still trying to consolidate and get its act together. So that's the European ensembles. What's the GFS ensembles looking like right here? Mainly kind of being more on the conservative side, still supporting tropical storm strength, especially as it heads towards Louisiana. Winds around 50 to 60 miles per hour is their peak intensity looking at that. But by and large, the GFS is still kind of split on either this heading towards Louisiana or the Florida Panhandle somehow, although a lot of the tracking models with the hurricane models now have this moving just due west into the Louisiana mouth of the Mississippi River over there, the Mississippi River Delta. So that's what we're paying attention to for the most part. So that's your GFS ensembles. Taking a quick look at the Google DeepMind, yeah, a lot of them have shifted up as well. They're having this impacting Louisiana, moving through that state before potentially re-emerging in the Gulf, strengthening some more before making landfall in Texas. A lot of the Google DeepMind want this around the Houston area. The NHC cone wants this in the Houston area as well, so you're going to want to watch out and pay attention for this moving forward. I know there's a slight risk of flooding from pretty much Florida all the way to Texas from this rainfall and from this tropical depression turning into tropical storm. So that's what we have for right there. Let's go ahead and look at the Euro AI ensembles. Definitely an interesting situation right here. The AI ensembles for the Euro have actually shifted a little bit. What we were seeing previously was a lot of them actually had it moving further up to the north, impacting Louisiana and Mississippi. Now we're seeing a lot more of these members shifting further to the south and missing the coast of Louisiana entirely, or either that or making a landfall in the Mississippi River Delta before moving further to the west and impacting Texas as a strong tropical storm. So that's the latest guidance that we have for you guys in terms of our ensembles. Let's take a quick gander at some of our operational models as well. So let's go ahead and pull up the European. Let's go ahead and shift over to our Western Atlantic area right here, because I want to take a quick gander at this and see how things are going to progress moving forward. So you have this tropical depression continuing to organize and strengthen. The European has this down to a 1,004 millibar system. As it approaches Florida, some of that wind shear starts to take advantage of it, though, before making landfall, mainly weakening it beforehand. The operational models, I will say, have had a hard time catching up with what's going on the ground, so I am taking these with more of a grain of salt. I am showing you guys to kind of show that disconnect between the ensembles and the operational models, but I'm also showing this to tell you that while this is important, I'm also looking at the conditions with this system as well, and we will be taking a look at those very soon. So that's what we have with the European. This system makes landfall in Louisiana, brings pretty significant flooding threat to areas in there, in Texas, further to the west. So that's what we're seeing. GFS is not doing too much better either, although the GFS is actually, unlike the European, at least at the 12Z run, is a bit more aggressive. What was it at the 0Z? Definitely a bit more on the aggressive side compared to what we've seen with the latest European, so that switch has definitely started to flip. It does get to around a 999 millibar system before making landfall in Louisiana, potentially a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm, if not stronger, at that current point in time. Let's go ahead and see the 12Z data as well. 997, so definitely been trending stronger as it's approaching Louisiana. That is strong tropical storm territory, potentially 65, maybe even 70 miles per hour if it pushes it before that shear starts to move deeper into this system, or if the system moves far enough from to the south and stays away from the most immediate shear. That'll definitely be an interesting situation, but it makes landfall in Louisiana, kind of reemerges in the Gulf, stays in over water, and potentially heads towards Texas as a tropical storm as well. So if you guys think that you're in the clear over there, if you're in the Florida Panhandle, you're definitely not, because you're definitely going to see some of those outer bands. You might have already started to see some of those as they're starting to get their act together and continue to organize. We will show you that on satellite imagery in just a few minutes. But that's your GFS run. Here is your Canadian ensemble. The 12Z is also starting to pop up. A bit more of a northern bias over here as well, I will say. A lot of the models and the NHC keep this further to the south towards Louisiana. Canadian wants this to make landfall near the Florida-Alabama border. I don't see this happening at this current point, based on the recent guidance and the fact that we have a developing ridge further to the west that's going to steer this mainly to the west. So that's what we're seeing with the CMC. Let's go ahead and take a look at the icon. The 12Z is out. Yesterday with the 18Z icon, it had the system becoming a Category 3 hurricane heading towards Texas after making landfall in the Mississippi River Delta. That was a huge outlier, thankfully. That's not going to happen from what I've seen, and the icon has fallen back to earth around 1,002 millibar peak, so maybe a 50 to 60 mile per hour tropical storm before making landfall in Louisiana and then heading towards Texas. So that's what we're looking at right here, and it seems to me that while the ensembles are definitely more on the aggressive side, the operationals are continuing to catch up, although there is some agreement that this is staying around moderate to strong tropical storm strength at this current point between the two, unless the system just completely shifts to the south and misses the Louisiana coast entirely, which that is still a possibility. It is a decreasing possibility, but it is still a possibility at this current point in time as we start to see the hurricane models tracks and intensities as well. So here is your track models for Tropical Depression 2. This is as of the 12Z run right here. We're kind of split 50-50, I would say. Half the models want this to make landfall, half the models want this to stay out to sea. That's what we're paying attention to, but every single one of these, with the exception of the HAVS-B, it has this moving further to the west and heading towards Texas and Louisiana. Whether it's as a moderate to strong tropical storm or potentially stronger will depend on whether the system can battle the wind shear that's currently impacting it, as well as stay over the warm waters it's currently situated on. But you are noticing some interesting stuff here. You're noticing a lot of the models having the system making landfall at the mouth of the Mississippi River here in Louisiana, and then moving out to sea, and then potentially organizing even further over the insanely warm waters off the coast of Louisiana as well. So we're going to want to watch out for this. We're going to want to pay attention to this, and it's a good thing we have recon data that's gone into this to kind of give an analysis as to where this system is. It definitely has shifted a bit further to the south compared to what we've seen with the 12Z data that we have right here, as the system's trying to get its act together, trying to organize, and potentially strengthen as it moves further to the west. So overall, that's what we have with our track models. Here are our intensity for you guys right here. Intensity models kind of remaining the same. The majority of them wanted at tropical storm strength, but they're mainly keeping it at moderate to strong tropical storm strength before impacting Louisiana and then heading west towards Texas. So we've looked at the observations, we've looked at the models. Let's look at the conditions now and kind of round this out and go, okay, what's working for this system and what's working against it? To start off, we're going to look at our water temperatures over here for parts of the Gulf right here. Looking at what we're at ahead of this, we're looking at around 30 to 31 degrees Celsius water temperatures across much of the region this is going to be moving towards. That is 86 to 88 degrees Fahrenheit for those of you who do not use the metric system. Matter of fact, giving you a better view of what we're looking at, this is kind of your water temperatures going on in the Gulf as the system is still getting its act together. It's taking advantage of the warm water to produce a lot of convection. It's just battling a couple of bad elements right now. But overall, the water temperatures are a huge plus going in the system's direction. Taking a look at the ocean heat content, the OHC is also a plus going into the system's direction because there is 50 to 75 OHC the system is currently over. What OHC is, for those of you who do not know, think of it as a fuel tank for tropical cyclone development. The larger your OHC is, the higher your fuel tank is. It's essentially a measurement also of how warm your water is and how deep down that water extends. In some parts of the Gulf, you're not going to get a reading because it's on the continental shelf, and that continental shelf is very shallow. But in other parts of the Gulf, except for like where this system is currently, you can definitely get a better reading of about 50 to 75, I would say. And that is a pretty decent area of OHC that the system is over that's going to continue to tap into to produce more of that convection and continue to get organized. So that's what we're looking at, and that's what's going for it. Now we have a couple of rather unexpected things going against it. The dry air is definitely something that was kind of something to watch out for, but the wind shear this early on has definitely been a bit more of a wild card than what I was originally forecasting. And this is what we got for you guys right here. Where the system is at, it's in an area of about 20 to 25 knots of wind shear. The wind shear that was further up to the north has shifted into the parts of the Gulf right here. Overall, it's not too much of a deal breaker right now, but that is going to, if it moves further to the west, slow down its consolidation. And if that wind shear remains and if that wind shear persists, it's going to help halt that intensity, which is why the NHC kind of dropped their intensity from 60 to 50 miles per hour based on what I've seen. I'm wanting to look at the wind shear map and the wind shear forecast that some of the models are showing because I want to know if this is a one-time thing or if this is going to keep ramping up. And from what I've seen, it looks to me that we could see an argument for both. And I'll talk about that in just a second. Another thing I'm noticing too is, at least from what I'm observing right now compared to what I saw previously, and I'll actually refresh the page to kind of see if that's going to reinforce that or not. Yeah, it kind of has. What I'm noticing with this is, what we were noticing previously was this wind shear pocket was expected to move and kind of originate further to the east around the Florida coast. It looks to me that it shifted a bit further to the west. And I want to look at our wind shear map when I look at the European forecast for that to kind of rather confirm or deny those suspicions real quickly. So that's what we're seeing with the wind shear. Also still watching out for that dry air aspect of things. Let's take a look at the water vapor satellite. The dry air, although it was a problem previously, and it still is to arguably to some extent with the wind shear starting to kick in, it's not as big of a factor as what we were seeing the last couple of nights when we were on stream and when we were looking at this live. The dry air aspect of it is definitely also interesting to say the very least. There was definitely some more moisture that moved into the Gulf that kind of helped plug some of those gaps right here. And given that we are seeing increased convection across much of the storm right now, you're having a situation where the dry air is not going to be too big of an issue unless that wind shear picks it up and starts potentially entraining it in the storm. But based on the fact that this system has fought like hell and fought its way to get to where it's at right now, is definitely a sign that this system is organizing, that it's battling that dry air, and regardless of the wind shear, it's still going to be intensifying at that current point. I have seen tropical cyclones intensify over some sort of wind shear. Hurricane Fiona in 2022, for example, had some wind shear. It was battling 50 knots of wind shear when it first was designated as a tropical depression. It ultimately strengthened to a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm while it was sheared like a sheep. And by the time this wind shear started to even calm down just a little bit, that's when you started seeing a little bit of more convection moving into the center of circulation, and that's what ultimately allowed for the system to become a hurricane and then eventually a major after impacting Puerto Rico. So it's definitely a situation where the wind shear could definitely slow down its intensification, but I don't think it's going to stop this from being a tropical storm or a potentially high impact storm for those on the Gulf Coast, mainly because of the fact that the system has been producing convection like crazy this morning, especially compared to what we've seen the last couple of nights. And the system is definitely going to start getting its act together as that pressure has continued to sink and as those winds will start to increase as well. So that's what we're seeing with our conditions. I want to take a look at our wind shear forecast real quickly just to kind of compare and contrast what the European forecast was going for compared to what we're seeing now with the observations. And with that, let's go ahead and pull this up. So here is our bulk shear. Let's go ahead and go to 10 a.m. right here. So you had a lot of this big wind shear kind of shifting a bit and kind of keeping it further to the east from what I've seen. Yes, there is some wind shear that is currently over in parts of the Gulf right now. Taking a quick gander at what we were seeing compared to our observed, I would say that with the exception of it being weaker further to the east, this is about what we were expecting at this current point in time. The main question is what is this going to do over the next few days? Well, based on what I've seen, it looks to me that according to the European forecast, that wind shear that we were talking about mainly stays to its north and it actually backs off to some extent from what I have seen according to the latest Euro. It backs off to some extent, maybe gives it a little more breathing room, but by the time we get to about tomorrow morning, you start seeing that wind shear starting to pick up once again, and then it starts to level off. It's kind of a situation where yesterday, let's pull up the model from yesterday. Yesterday was a situation where you had a couple more openings, I would say, and what we were also looking at was a higher scenario of this system missing Louisiana entirely, or just clipping the Mississippi River Delta, and then just kind of moving into this shear pocket over here that we were talking about that would allow for the system to potentially organize and strengthen further. What we're seeing today is something kind of similar. In some metrics, I would argue that the wind shear has definitely kind of dipped a little bit, but in other metrics, especially further to the east, the wind shear has increased to some extent. So based on my opinion and from what I can gather with this, yeah, wind shear is going to be a bit of a problem, especially for right now. But if this can kind of fight it off and take advantage of the low wind shear pockets that might end up coming with it down the line in the next couple of days, it'll have a chance to get its act together and a chance to become stronger than what I think a lot of people will initially forecast for. Personally, I'm leaning right now for this system being around 60 to 65 miles per hour with all things considered, given that the dry air is not too big of a problem and the wind shear, while it's definitely being a problem now, as down the line, if this heads towards Louisiana, I think this could be a scenario where if the wind shear just backs off by a slight amount, this system, especially with what's doing right now, could take full advantage of that and surprise a lot of people. The HMA and the HWRF earlier were wanting this system to be a hurricane heading towards Louisiana as well. So I'm kind of in between the NHC guidance and some of the hurricane model guidance right there. So that's just kind of my personal opinion on this. But regardless of how strong this will ultimately get, what I am noticing with this is going to be a relatively high impact scenario where you have this situation where if you're in Louisiana and Mississippi, especially in the low-lying areas, you're going to be severely impacted by this, especially with the flood threat, especially with potential storm surge. 2 to 4 feet of storm surge may not seem like that much for those areas, but that can push really deep inland, especially if you're in the Mississippi River Delta area and if you're in the lower-lying ports of Louisiana. I'm not saying that this is going to happen to New Orleans, but I am saying that there are going to be some pretty significant impacts over there, especially if the flood threat starts to persist from Lake Pontchartrain and from the rainfall that is expected with this. So that's kind of where I'll close this video off right here. Maybe a high impact system from what I've seen right here. Strong tropical storm is what I'm expecting at this current point, unless something unexpected completely happens, like the wind shear collapsing. So we'll have to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're closing the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. Feel free to join the Storm United Discord server. The link to that is in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.